All right. So the watch page, you can go to my YouTube page and pull it up if you want to look at the comments. You can go ahead and do that. You just open a new tab and have it over there if you want to. If you want to be able to see the comments and respond to them, it's totally up to you. Um, I'm gonna have it running kind of in the background here.
Okay.
So I'll at least have some way to monitor it as we go. And generally, we do want to accept some questions from the audiences. But if you see anything that looks good, you definitely want to sound it out. You can go to my YouTube page and pull it up. And I believe that we are live. So if you are tuning in, first off, let us know where it is that you are watching from. And today, what we're going to be doing is having a discussion with my friend Pete from Defiant Munitions. Pete, welcome in. How you doing today,
Thank
bud?
you. Thanks for good. Thanks for having me, guys.
Um, so first off, tell everybody about Defiant Munitions. Like, what do you guys seek to do, really?
Well, after I've been in the business, the ammunition industry for a really long time. I was kind of born into it. My dad had been into it since 1982. And when he sold the family company, I guess I wasn't done yet, and so we started Defiant Munitions. Basically, high performance, you know, lower production, higher quality self defense and hunting ammunition based around solid copper projectiles.
So why did you go with the solid copper projectile?
I think they offer a lot of performance benefits. There was still a lot of room to to make some improvements with the solid copper loadings and the projectiles themselves, and yeah, I really prefer the way they perform and penetrate. We're able to control expansion um, and do a lot of different things, with them that you really can't do with a lead cup and core bullet.
Gotcha. I personally shoot the whole spectrum of ammo, so
Mhm.
I think that there's a lot of good applications for spun coppers over traditional lead and copper bullets, or even some exotic materials.
Mhm.
Especially when it goes to, I actually carry around a 408 Chi-Tech
Yeah.
projectile on my keychain, and they gave them
Mhm.
to all of us who were hitting the I think it was the 1,500 yard target. Everybody who hit
Mhm.
got a projectile, and I actually
Cool.
got stopped at TSA. I thought they were going to take it from me, and the guy actually just wanted to chat about what it was,
Nice.
because he didn't think
Nice.
it was a 50 cal, and they're really long bullets, so they're somewhat
Yeah.
deceptive. So,
Right.
again, guys, we are joined here today with Pete from Defiant Munitions, and I've just got a couple questions that I had intended to ask Pete today about ammunition manufacturing, as well as some curiosities that I have. So definitely, if you have a question for Pete, then leave it in the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat throughout today's live stream. We're going to stream for about an hour today, I think, and hopefully we'll be able to get to some of your guys' questions. And of course, sound off in the chat. Let us know where you're watching from, for those of you who weren't here right at the beginning, because it definitely helps with the engagement, and it helps get the stream out to more people that might want to see it. Um, that said, Pete, my first question is, why the hell is ammunition so expensive?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of different reasons. It I can eat I can, I can answer that question a little bit more easily of why mine's expensive compared to some others, but as a whole in general, I mean, the price of copper went up 85 cents pound 2 weeks ago, I think, and just I mean, material costs are skyrocketing. I mean, some of it's just out of control. I mean, that's part of the reason, but another big reason is, demand. When we are fighting, these panic buys and stuff that we were talking about earlier before we started, um, it really drives the prices. And I see a lot of people that purposely raise their prices just because they know they'll sell it no matter what price it's at. So that has a lot to do with it. Primer availability, and now with this, scare with the powder and stuff with the nitro, it's going to start driving prices. It's already driven prices for primers and powder, especially.
Can I stop you right there?
But
Can you fill everybody in on what the scare with the nitro was?
well, I mean, to make a short say about it is, the largest producer of nitroglycerin is in China, and for obvious reasons, a lot of that stuff's not going to be coming imported in. So that's really going to cut a huge chunk of the nitroglycerin distribution out of the U.S. That is the biggest problem.
So, to give people an idea, what is the percentage breakdown when it comes to ammunition manufacturing? Like, if you could list the components, like including like labor and operating costs, like how would you break that down for people to kind of understand how something like the nitro problem works into the overall equation of what the end retail price ends up being?
I'm honestly not sure on how that would come into play, percentage wise. But material costs, like our most expensive material here is copper. These little copper bullets are extremely expensive, to manufacture. They're pure copper. And they cost us a lot to manufacture. So that's a huge chunk of the reason why our ammunition, is, maybe, a few cents around higher, a little bit higher, a dollar or two a box higher, um, is mainly because of that. We don't use, 8-cent bullets in our premium products. These are really high end premium cut bullets, and it's costs a lot of money to manufacture. So,
Now, do
but
you make the bullets in house?
We don't. No, we have them made out of house for us right now. But we're we're getting bigger and bigger, and we're trying to build on. But right now, somebody makes them for us, and sends them to us.
I mean, that's pretty standard across the board. Usually, there's really a couple bullet manufacturers in the United States.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, when people, it's like, oh, you don't make them in house. Well, neither does anybody else,
Yeah,
really. I mean,
yeah.
there are a few, of course, but
That
there's not many.
that wasn't me trying to slide on you. I was just curious for
No, of
myself
course.
because some people pop up out of nowhere and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're totally doing this by ourselves now," you know, and it's
Yeah.
news to me. Um,
Yeah.
so my next question, and this one might be this one also might be difficult to answer, but I recently did a video about velocities and ammunition, and I understand the frustration with a lot of people when they look to purchase something like subsonic ammunition. And the
Hmm.
question is, why is subsonic ammunition like 30% more expensive than regular ammo? Now, I'm not saying
Yeah.
specifically about like yours, for instance, but generally I went across the internet and basically just pulled like random prices from the same manufacturer, and it's like 30% more expensive to purchase across the board on average.
Yeah. So you told me you were going to ask this question, when we were talking about this, and I've been racking my brain constantly on how to answer this question. Um, and it's got to be a marketing thing for other people, because if you look at my component breakdown, how much money and powder am I putting in a 9 millimeter TCX subsonic? or well, let's just take 308 for instance. You know how much I put less powder in it. Um, that powder is a little bit more expensive, just because of what it is. Um, but I'm using like way less than a normal load. It's the same brass, you know, same case, same primer, and we use a special, you know, bullet, a special solid copper projectile that actually is about the same price as like a 168 projectile that we load into the TCX. And I I don't understand why people are doing it. It's got to be a marketing thing, you know, because it's like, ooh, subsonic, so it's something special. And I think they can get away with it. Unfortunately, a lot of other companies in this industry do a lot of that, and I don't know how else to answer it. It's got to be that's what it is, because our subsonics fall prices fall right in line with my other ones, and sometimes they're even cheaper. I'm nearly positive my 308 subsonic is cheaper than my other standard full power 308s.
Well,
My 9
so that is the
what's that?
contention that a lot of people make, is that logically we're putting less propellant in there. So that's one of the expenses. So if we're using less of that and maybe more bullet, if we're saying that, if we, just for the sake of discussion, say that it's 30% more expensive to retail is 30% more expensive on a subsonic loading than your standard pressure 9 mil or 300 blackout, then it's not like we're putting 30% more bullet in there. Like, it's not like the cost of the bullet increased that much. And then that is also offset by the reduction in propellant using the same powder, or not same powder, same primer, same casing. And that cost if you were to evaluate the cost in the powder, you said it's a little bit more expensive, but it's not like 10 percentage points more expensive.
Oh,
Right?
hell no. Yeah, no, yeah. No, and the reason why my subsonic powder's more expensive is because we actually worked with a powder company back when I was with my family's company, on developing a special subsonic powder for a military project, and we designed a special powder for subsonic cartridge rifle cartridges. And so we had it made, and it, you know, to have a custom order made, we had, you know, I had to pay a little bit more money for it, and I still use that same technology here.
Right.
So other than that, I mean, most of everybody else's powder that they're using probably costs the same as any other load.
They may
I'm
even be using
looking
the
now.
same powder.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not exactly the same, but yeah. So I'm just looking before I put my foot in my mouth. So yeah, so like I'm just looking on my website. My standard, my full power
let's
308
not
Winchester.
list any prices directly
Oh, okay.
on the live
Yeah, I
stream. Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying we'll just say it's roughly, you know, it's like $5 difference, and the subsonic is cheaper. Does that work?
Yeah. 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 That makes
Yeah.
sense.
So
Yeah. I
yeah,
don't want I don't want us to get dinged for talking about direct prices, but if we're talking, +5 or, whatever, then that's probably safe. It's listing the direct information that I think would probably get us popped. But
yeah, I totally understand. I don't fully know all the you know, the rules and
and
stuff, so
and
I
if
apologize.
anybody tells you that they do, then they're full of crap, because the rules change like every day. I just did a video today where I was talking about the
Yeah.
rules changing on YouTube. So
Yeah.
it's in constant flux. So
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
so theoretically, we would assume that subsonic loadings should cost less pretty much across the
It
board, but
should.
there's some kind of marketing in there. Um,
It is.
some kind of marketing, and or there's some kind of additional overhead that's being created by this. Maybe
Yeah, I
I
go
I
ahead.
can think about maybe a large manufacturer that is pulling machine time away from a a major line, for instance, to run subsonic, right? So
Yeah.
they're going to do a small run of this subsonic ammunition, and we'll say that it's half the size of a normal run of ammunition that they would do, and they have to swap the programming and the machines and the components out to make that ammunition, because it's going to be a lower yield run. Then they have to make up that teardown time for that line. Now, I know that there are some companies that leave their subsonic lines open all the time, and they just walk over and turn the machines on with the components in it, and that's a thing. But especially when we're talking about major automation, there are some of those factors that we have to consider when we're talking about major runs of things. So I suppose that would be a good example of why going for a somebody who maybe specializes in that sort of stuff might be a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. For me to switch over, say I'm loading, 9-115s and I want to load 9-135 subsonics or any other bullet for that case, it takes me about an hour and a half from start to finish to where my machine's running and producing. It's about an hour and a half, give or take, and that would probably include some range time, um, an hour for sure, without range time. So
Yeah. And what, for everybody who's listening, what does that mean? What does the range time mean?
well, we anytime we go load anything here, anything at all, if we, I mean, say we load 9-115 on Friday and then we stop, and then Monday we start loading the same load again. It doesn't matter. Whatever we start with testing. So we'll pressure test, accuracy test, velocity test, the whole gamut. The only thing that we don't do, we'll check all of our bullets. So say we get a lot of 9-115 bullets in the TCX, we'll check for bullet performance right when we get it, and inspect those bullets. But then, yeah, range time is not necessarily always pressure. So, like if I'm running something and I'm like mid run, when we need to do a check, we'll just do velocity and accuracy. We always try to gather that out of at least two different real world guns. We don't print our velocities out of pressure barrels like everybody does.
I gotcha. So I want to go to the chat because I think we got a pertinent question to insert right here, and this is a question directly for
Awesome.
you, Pete. The question is, do you
Cool. I
think?
appreciate it.
The question is, Pete, do you think that whole copper bullets are more consistent weight for the bullet? That's more evenly distributed because it's not a bimetal construction. Like, what? Why are they more consistent? Is the question?
Well, they're made on, Swiss screw machines. And I mean, obviously, quality control has a lot to do with it. But yeah, we can, the cool thing is with, the way these bullets are made, if we wanted to do 115 and a half grain bullet, we could do it. It's just, the machines are super consistent, and we get a very consistent yield out of it.
Well, that makes sense to me. Like when I look at the actual like manufacturing process of making the bullets, because I've been to some plants where they actually physically make the bullets, and
Mm-hmm.
while the bonded bullets can be very accurate, it just intrinsically in my mind, watching a bullet spin on a lathe, right, and then
Right.
drop into a thing, and then it starts the next one. I would just assume that is, especially when you're using a uniform material. I would assume,
Exactly.
yeah,
Right. And then, if you're making, a cup, a jacketed, bullet, lead cup and core bullet, I mean, you essentially have two pieces, sometimes three, depending on what kind of bullet you're making. and now you're trying to rely on, are the jackets, the pre-made jackets, do they all weigh the exact same? Do all the lead cores all weigh the same, exactly the same? And now we put them together. So there could definitely be some variance there where we're machining one solid bullet from a solid piece of billet, and so it's much more consistent. Not to say that cup and core bullets aren't consistent, because they definitely can be and are, but the solid copper bullets that we produce are typically right on the money all the time.
When it comes
We don't
to
have to.
now, when it comes to the terminal ballistic capabilities of those solid copper bullets, there's additional stuff that has to be done to it to make it do all the magic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a bullet that is like a bonded bullet that's got differential materials in it. You basically, leave a little bit of lead exposed to the front or an open tip match or something like that, and the thing basically does what it's supposed to because it disintegrates. What kind of things do you look for in your bullets to ensure that, even though we are using basically spears, high velocity spears, how do you keep them from just punching right through? And the reason I bring this up is that I call back to a test that we did, years ago. We were shooting watermelons with a 338 Lapua from like 1,200 yards away, right? And we thought that we were missing, so we actually took a GoPro and put it out there, and we weren't missing. They were just punching little tiny 30 caliber holes in the watermelon, even though a 338 Lapua with the right load hits with like the force of a 308 at the muzzle at 1,000 yards. So
right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the cool thing is with, unlike, lead cup and core bullets that, they're a velocity driven bullet that needs certain, max velocities to be able to perform properly. I mean, we can change the cuts in, the serrations on these bullets to make them expand at any velocity. Or to expand, do different things at, different velocities, like our subsonic bullets. Those bullets will, expand down to a super low velocity, but still work at, a higher velocity. So just the way we can manipulate, the bullet, and the cuts in the bullets, and, make the pedal start bending back, quicker or slower, and then the shape of the pedal obviously makes a big difference as well.
Oh, sure. Well, I think everybody at this point in time has seen enough high-speed video in gel that just, quite frankly, didn't exist 10 years ago, right? Now everybody's kind of like intimately acquainted with the terminal ballistics side of things and what those bullets are doing. Whereas before, the technology existed, but it wasn't applied quite as widely as it is today. And I think that you can literally now look at a bullet on the shelf and kind of get an idea of what you're going to expect from it when it translates to target.
Totally.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
Okay, so I have another question, and this is another one of my questions for videos that I'm currently working on. There's a lot to do, and it's sort of about subsonic ammunition, but oftentimes you will get marketed subsonic ammunition, and then you go out and you might pair it with the wrong gun suppressor combo or something like that. And you might, let's just take a 9mm, for instance. You might have a stated velocity of like 1,200 feet per second, and then you go out and you put it in like a 9mm rifle, and you end up with like a 1,300 feet per second on your chronograph. And then you do that, and you'll do that outside, and it's like 90 some degrees outside. But then you go out there, on a different day, maybe in the winter, and suddenly you're subsonic out of a similar gun. How big Now I'm empirically testing this right now. I'm doing a series of tests to gauge this. What kind of impact do you think is related to the environmental conditions when somebody is employing that? Because a lot of these manufacturers will load that subsonic ammunition very close to the limit, because you don't necessarily want a subsonic projectile that's doing 700 feet per second, right? You're
Right.
looking for something that's closer to 1,000, because you want it to still impart the most energy on the target, but you still want it underneath the sound barrier for the sound effects with the suppressors and stuff like that.
Yeah, that is definitely the hard part of, producing a good subsonic load for the masses, right? So we really, when we sat down to do ours, we really sat down and tested it through everything that we could literally get our hands on. Just to say, hey, what if, Murphy's Law, somebody has one of these guns and they want to shoot it, are they gonna, you know, get a baffle strike, or are they going to be, supersonic, or, whatever. So we tried to pick velocity ranges that were like kind of like right in the middle, that would kind of work with everything. Especially like a 9 millimeter, because you could shoot a 16-inch barrel, you could shoot a 3-inch barrel. So it was really difficult. But yeah, I mean, temperatures and elevation and humidity, that all plays a role. The other big thing is trying to find a powder that is not, as temperature sensitive. So, it's going to stay pretty flat across the board. Um, but yeah, it really comes down to, doing the research and, finding the combinations that kind of works, in that happy medium. We always, on our boxes, we put like, for our 308, for instance, we put the barrel length that was tested, the twist rate and everything. Just so, like, if somebody buys a box and it's like, well, they're shooting a 24-inch, 1 in 10 twist. They can actually look on my box and see what barrel length that I tested these out of, with what twist rate. So they're like, okay, well, we're shooting, our barrels, a couple inches longer than theirs, so this is what I can look to expect. So, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely, definitely an issue, and it's an issue that I've dealt with at the other company, where people have called like 300 blackout, for instance. Well, back then it was 300 whisper, but people were having those issues where it would go, supersonic through their guns, but it remains, subsonic through ours.
So when it comes to we got some feedback going on right there, pretty bad. Did you hear that?
Really?
Yeah.
All
right, so
no,
it's gone, I think.
Here. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, I think that there was just probably a switch over because we were talking different. The mic kind of got situated to you, and then I came in from a different source, and it kind of freaked out a little bit. It sounds like it's normalized a little bit. So, in your experience, since you test I've done a fair amount of ammunition testing, but not nearly on the scale of stuff that would be anywhere comparable to somebody who runs an ammunition manufactory. So, in your opinion, or in your experience, you can choose either one. When it comes to these factors, when it comes to temperature, is it the powder reaction rate, or is it the interaction between the materials in the gun? So, like, the gun's cold, therefore it's going to shoot slower, or is it the gun's cold but the ammo's warm? Is it the reaction rate in the primer? Is it the reaction rate of the powder? Like, is it the atmosphere in the that's in the case is too cold? Like, what is the secret sauce? What is the number one attribute there when it comes to temperature that defines how the how the subsonic loading is going to perform.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely comes down to powder, but I think it's all the above for sure. It's going to depend on a lot, several different things. But powder, I think, is the biggest culprit. You know, if you're, letting that, letting your ammunition warm up or cool down, you're definitely going to see a difference. I don't care how, temperature stable they claim a powder is going to be. There's always going to be a variant. If you're letting your ammo cook at, and it's, 92 degrees out, and you let that shit sit out in the sun for an hour, you're definitely going to see a variant. 100%.
What kind of variance would you, if you could, throw a number out really quick, what do you think that should look like?
Man, it's hard to throw a number out. Just, I think it depends on so many different things. You could see climbs over, 100 feet, 200 feet. If you let something sit out in the sun for a while, and, at 92 degrees outside, I mean, you could see a serious rise in velocity and pressure. Now cold, on the other hand, from my experience, I've seen, like, in pistol ammo, if it's like, we're testing ammo in South Dakota here, and it's, negative 14 degrees,
It
which
gets real cold in South Dakota.
which happens. Yeah, it happens. I don't know how many times I was out at the range outside, accuracy testing in negative 17-degree weather, because I had to get it done. I didn't have a choice. I couldn't wait until tomorrow. And our velocities were definitely softer. And I remember that day that we were shooting 9, and some 5.56 stuff. We were running about 30 to 40% softer. And I was like, why are these velocities so slow? And I'm so stupid. I was like, oh, boom, it's freaking negative 17 degrees out. And no matter, even though I kept that ammo in my pocket and everything, and took it out and shot it real quick and did all my testing, it still doesn't matter. The guns are out in it, and, and it cools down quick. So it definitely does. And I know it was because I saved some of that exact lot, and went and retested it with, when we were about 15 above, and the velocities came up. So I know it was just, those weather conditions.
Yeah, I guess there's another factor that I didn't add in there, and that is the density of the air, right? Because at a certain point, once you reach a certain inflection point, the air is going to, all the water is going to fall out of the air after you get below freezing, first of all, and then, once you really start getting into those cold temperatures, it's definitely going to play a role. But you're going with powder. You're going with powder is probably all things are a factor, but powder is the one that, at least the one that we can focus on and maybe deal with, right? All the other ones, if it's minus 14 degrees outside, there ain't anything that you're going to do about it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I think powder is the biggest culprit for sure.
So
that's got to be the biggest player for sure.
Gotcha. So I'm currently doing some testing. I've been doing it a little bit at a time because I wanted to get multiple days. But the days need to be the right temperature outside to do it. So I've got a room temperature lot. All right, it's all the same lot. I got a room temperature box. I've got a cold box, so I literally throw it in the freezer, like the deep freeze. And then I've got a hot box that's on the dashboard of the truck. So I test in the middle of the day when it's like 100 degrees inside the truck, right? Like I did some temperature testing. It was like 110 degrees in the truck or something like that after sitting, in the 90 degree weather outside. It was hot. So go out, shoot the ammo. I do the cold first, so the gun is cold, right? And then do the room temperature stuff. But I also let the gun cool. And what you're saying is pretty much on point with what I'm seeing, right? So I expected there to be a reduction, but I expected it to be like, I'm talking somewhere between 100 degrees and, minus 10 degrees Fahrenheit, right? So I'm expecting there to be, like 40 or 50 feet of deviation. And no, I'm seeing like from the room temperature to the cold, I'm seeing like 100 feet of difference between the two. Same gun, obviously. Now, obviously, if my room temperature is 70 and my outside temperature is 110, well, that's not quite the drop from 70 down to minus 10, right?
Right.
I can.
Right.
I'm very apprehensive about putting the ammunition in the oven. Okay.
I would be. Yeah, I would be too.
So I have my
what
limits.
What caliber are we talking?
This is 9mm because it's readily available.
Okay.
Right. It's
Cool.
just it's a 9mm factory load that I have an abundant amount of.
Sure.
And I suppose I could have gone with a subsonic load because that would have made the measurements wider, maybe. But
Yeah.
but I think a factory 115 grade load works fine for this. But
Sure. Yeah, and everybody can relate to it, so I think it was a good choice.
yeah, I was gonna do 300 blackout, but I was like, man, 300 blackout's expensive.
Yeah, it is.
And I need to not just do it once. So I've basically set it up so I can do it 20 times off the same box, basically, without negatively
Right.
impacting the because you can only shoot so many of them if you're taking chrono data, especially the cold stuff, right? You can only fire like 3 cold rounds before the temperatures and you got to do it quickly. Like I can't even, when I'm doing it, I can't even watch the chronograph. I have to shoot them and let the camera pick up the velocities because I got to get those out before the temperature in the chamber,
Right. Yeah, that's another factor. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the chamber starts getting warm on you. Yeah, it's definitely going to change everything.
And it doesn't take a whole lot to cook off. Like, not that a cook off would be something that we would be concerned about in this, but as a way to think about how fast that temperature transfer can happen. I've had guns, cook off on me, and they're like basically automatic fire, right? Like you need to separate the ammunition feeding device from the weapon or go for the ride type thing. So it's not like, it can be very, very quick. So
definitely,
you can't let it sit around.
No. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's it'll be I would love to talk to you some more once you start concluding your testing and stuff. Because I think that that's obviously super interesting and I think it's very cool.
Well, I think that there is a lot of discontentment out there with people, not only because ammunition is expensive and subsonic ammunition, as we've established, is even more expensive. Like it kind of it rivals like premium precision grade ammo sometimes in its price point.
It does.
And it's a little bit ridiculous. I understand that it is specialty, but what was brought up to me is I have a gentleman locally, and for those of you who don't know, I'm an 0702, so I do transfers every once in a while, and he picked up a can, and it was a 22 can, and he had purchased it and put it into a truss so that his grandkids could mess with it. He's a little bit older. And he went out. He told me after the first time he took it out that he was kind of disappointed with its performance, even though it was a really nice 22 can. And I'm like, well, what did you shoot it on? And he was like, well, I bought subsonic ammunition. Well, he had shot it out of like some kind of, it had like an 18-inch barrel on the gun. I forget what the actual model of the gun was, but it was some threaded barrel 22 that had a super long barrel on it. And of course, even though he purchased subsonic ammunition that's supposed to be doing like 1,000 feet per second, well, if the stated velocity is 1,000 feet per second, you're shooting out of an 18-inch barrel, that thing's doing 1,200 or so.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. He's probably was around 1,200.
Yeah.
So, definitely.
So I actually told him to take it out and just go with the standard velocity ammo. I was like, go buy some trash ammo and put it on your, he has a Mark, one of the Ruger Mark series, right? One of the threaded barrel ones. I was like, shoot it on that. Tell me what you think. And he's actually a member of my church, and he came back. He's like, dude, you're right. I went out and it sounded great, even though, you know, pistols in 22 are typically considerably louder, or at least the perception is considerably louder because the barrel's closer to your, or the muzzle's closer to your face.
Right.
You perceive a much louder pop out of the pistols than the rifles because the rifle muzzle's farther away from you. Well, when you're suppressing the guns, it's actually the other way around, typically, because the velocity is considerably lower in the pistols by the time you get around to it. And a lot of times you can run out of a 22 pistol suppressed. You can pretty much run regular ammunition, again, dependent on that temperature and the ammunition itself, of course. And of course, all of this stuff you got to test yourself, right? Your individual.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, testing it yourself is a big thing. Yeah, getting data for yourself to see what everything's doing. I preach that a lot. It's like you gotta know, so you need to test it and find out what works best for yourself.
So, the chat says that I need to use liquid nitrogen to cool the ammo down. I'm like, oh my gosh. Well, we just turned a $20 video into a several $100 video. Thanks, guys. Right. I don't know.
Right.
At that point in time, I'm not sure that the ammunition would even function at that point in time. It would be, it might be so cold that the reaction rates wouldn't work. Somebody in the chat, go look up the I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Look up primer would be probably my guess of what would probably fail.
Somebody in the chat, look up the temperature at which liquid nitrogen boils, which is the level at which it's going to exist, right? That's when you see liquid nitrogen. It's almost always boiling. That's the equilibration temperature of the ammunition. So somebody Google that real quick and put it in the chat. So we can think about what it is that we're talking about. It's low compared to what we're going to produce with just
super low.
Yeah, it's super low. What that is like the extreme case of things that it could probably find on the planet.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So Pete, those are the questions that I kind of called this interview for, but what other special stuff do you got going on this year? Are you doing any training or any of that sort of stuff? Because Pete and I know each other through the tactical response community originally.
Yep.
And, oh yeah. So somebody just posted it's negative 320 degrees, Fahrenheit.
Oh, maybe we need to do it just to see if it'll even frickin' fire. But then again, I mean, even if it did fire, man, would the brass hold up to it? I mean, would you get, case head separation and shit? Like, man, that may be crazy.
I'm looking up how much liquid nitrogen costs right now. So I can get it on Amazon for $269.99.
Avsies. Let's do it.
I don't know that I need 10 liters of it.
That's true.
You guys are killing me. Absolutely killing me. We're going to put that down.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I would be interested in doing a test like that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that would be kind of neat. I think I'm going to have to put this on the list of things to do next.
Yeah.
Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell the chat right now. All right, I'm going to tell everybody who's watching. When the video about temperatures and velocities comes out, right, you guys need to be there and crush that video. You make that one popular, and I will go out and buy all the liquid nitrogen required, and I will pick some guns that can possibly blow up in the process.
Right.
And
that was good. That was my next thing. I was like, make sure you use guns that you may not get back.
Yeah. I mean, so here's the thing. Because of, what we do here, I basically have a continuous supply of test guns that are here for the purposes of doing stuff like that. Now, a lot of times I will bring a gun in and test it, and the manufacturer wants it back for evaluation purposes. But oftentimes I do my best to kind of maintain some of those products on site for the purposes of having a diverse roster, if you will. So if something comes in and needs to get tested on a whole bunch of different platforms, maybe it's an optic, maybe it's an ammo, maybe it's light laser or something like that, then I want to have a whole bunch of looks to give it, right? So there's always like 2 or 3 things that are kind of like semi-expendable, right?
Right.
And I do that stuff so that you guys don't have to. And of course, we make sure that we do this in the safest way possible. I don't know if you've seen my hydraulic trigger mechanism that I made. It's literally like 2 syringes and a piece of medical tubing with some water in it. You see all these big YouTubers out there with I always make fun of like Scott, my buddy Scott from Kentucky Ballistics, because he's got a rope over a truck, and it's like, dude, you could like literally just push a button and make it happen. Because I stopped doing that because we had a string and we pulled it and we didn't have it properly weighted, didn't have the sandbags on it, and it made the gun fall over.
Oh no.
Yeah, and that's a dangerous situation. So I think that's just as dangerous as doing stupid crap with loads and it potentially blowing up in your face. So now I have a hydraulic trigger. The gun is locked down. The only thing that it pushes on is the trigger guard or the front of the trigger guard to the trigger. You can't really screw it up, type thing.
Nice.
Yeah, and
yeah, that's awesome.
I've got I think I've got 600 feet of medical tubing, right? So I can be 600 feet away and push the thing. Now it's a little bit harder to push at that point in time, but you only have to move about that much, 3 inches of liquid, which comes out to, a little over 2 cc's of liquid in a syringe to be able to get that done. Yeah. So anyway, I digress. The internet really liked that one. So back to what I was asking you about. Do you have any big plans this year for like training or anything like that?
No, not right now. I would really like to get out to see Gary Marr. He's been a great friend of mine for so long, and I haven't been able to take one of his training classes. I'd really like to see him.
You're making me feel like a slouch because Gary's like only like 6 hours for me.
You're having the same problem too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I mean, I usually do a Haley strategic class every year. We're not going to do that this year. I just don't have a lot of plans other than, hunting season coming up. We'll do a bunch of hunting, of course. It's always a good time to, be able to test new things out, new products out, and see how they work.
What do you specifically hunt that you used for testers on?
Well, we shoot a lot of hogs, of course, because that's the easy, most plentiful thing. Deer,
and people hate them.
Man, I go different places, and we shoot deer with handguns, with 9s. I've shot deer with every single 9 defensive load that I make, in hogs and stuff. So yeah, we do a lot of that. And
where do you
be able to test
question where are you able to shoot deer with 9mm?
I'd privately owned stuff.
Oh, privately owned stuff. I gotcha. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, privately owned stock and stuff. So yeah, it's yeah.
Yeah, because that is a thing.
It is definitely a thing. Yeah, most definitely. So yeah, we other than that, man, I don't have a lot of plans this year. Other than, spending time with my family, and making more ammo. I'm pretty much here all the time. So but yeah, this year is just kind of a low year just because of what's going on politically and stuff. We're trying to stay close to home, not doing any, travels that are too far away, too much more time, as little time time away from home as possible, just because of everything, the way things are headed and stuff. So yeah, I think that's probably the main reason why we haven't made any big plans this year.
So, as far as that is concerned, we talked about this a little bit, before the show. Um, the gun industry, I don't know how anybody makes money in the gun industry. I have no clue
I don't either.
how any of this works. I mean, you literally sell things in the gun industry, and you don't know how it works. What
Yeah,
what
man, it's tough.
as far as what I appraise the major issue with the consumer market is that it has been based on this continuous cataclysm type of marketing for as far as back as I can remember, basically. So,
Hmm.
I mean, at least it at least 15, 20 years. It has been built around these people are going to be in office. We don't like those people, and therefore, the sky is falling. Our way of life is going to end, and because of that, there's this huge turmoil that kind of drives everything, not just ammunition and gun prices. But I see the gun industry uniquely impacted by this because they rely so heavily on this type of marketing now that
Yep.
it's just the concept is make it and they will buy it. And there's I see a lot of people who struggle, or a lot of companies that struggle because they don't know how to actually market. They just assume that they make it and the people will come, and then when the people don't show up, they don't know what to do. They haven't gotten with the
Right.
times. So
Yeah.
how,
No,
in
it's
your opinion, how is that? How big of a problem is that in our industry? So that it's not just
man,
me saying that.
yeah, it's a huge problem. And the funny thing is I know for a fact that a lot of these big players, these big guys, are the ones creating it. Um, and I know at least they're guilty of it. And they try to, you know, try to control the sales in the industry by that. And, yeah, it's just weird, and I yeah, it pisses me off. So
Well, I mean, it pisses me off because I see these companies that complain about this sort of thing, and they're like,
mhm.
we don't know what to do. And it's like, well, you actually have to go out and try to reach the consumer. They've, especially when we go from periods of relative turmoil to periods of relative peace, because for some reason people go to sleep when certain people are in office, and that's when
Yep,
like some of the worst stuff is usually perpetrated. I'm not
that's
going to name any
exactly right.
names. I'm not going to name any names. I'm not trying to go there today. You guys all
Yeah,
y'all watch and know exactly what I have to say about that. Um, but without naming any names, um, there are periods of time where it is rant, 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 panic buying, can't find it on the shelf. And then there
hmm,
are times where you go in and you can't give the ammo away, right? It's
yep,
stacked deep and nobody wants to buy it. Same thing with the guns. You go in there and there are sometimes when you go into the shop and the shelves are absolutely bare. They've got like one high point and like some precision rifle that's like $7,000 and nobody's bought, right? There's a 50 cal sitting on the counter that's been there for 4 years, right? Because you
right,
know, um, and then other times you go in there and they're begging you to buy something, right? They haven't made a sale all day.
yep,
So, and I understand that part of that
yeah,
the, um, is the online sales thing, right? That is absolutely a thing, that impacts the local, shops, productivity. But as far as across the industry and their ability to move product, um, personally, I think the distribution model is a major problem. You Do you do
definitely.
distributor stuff?
Very little, man. We really just stick to consumer direct right off our website. We do a little bit, like ammo supply warehouse is one of my biggest guys. But we do very little of it.
Gotcha. I wanted to make sure that I just didn't put my foot in my mouth and have a guest on here and then be like, "You're part of the problem, Pete, because you do distributor stuff," right?
No, man, I purposely kind of stayed away from it. I seen the issue when I was at the other company. And it's a big problem. And I was like, I ain't getting into that. I ain't playing that freaking game. So
We have a question in the chat. Thoughts on 3D printing ammo? We know that it's not 100%, but
uh,
what are your thoughts on like the future of this technology? Because we just freaked a whole bunch of liberals out. Like,
yeah, yeah, no kidding. Yeah, there will be people that don't sleep tonight because of that. No, yeah, man, I don't know. I've seen some 3D printed cases and stuff, and they look cool. I mean, they seem to offer a weight savings, benefit, for your military loadout guy. Um, I kind of look at it as, what's broke. I mean, what why do we need to fix it other than, if you can, pack on, another 100 rounds onto your body for a loadout, at the same weight. Those are just numbers. But yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, maybe expense. Maybe it's cheaper to 3D print. It probably is to 3D print a case of some sort. Than a brass. An extruded piece of brass. I don't know.
so are we talking now?
It really just depends.
I'm completely unfamiliar with 3D printed casings. Are we talking about a composite, or are we talking about like a direct laser sintered type thing?
I'm talking about, yeah, composite is
Yeah.
what I've seen.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, I think that you touched on the two things there that would be really important about 3D printed casings. Weight, certainly. If it's made out of, I mean, I have no idea what the differential on that would be, but it has to be. I mean, it probably is significant, and I'm not going to give a confidence interval for that, but I would say that it's likely considerable. But I think that probably the real thing would be the price, because I know that we do have plastic cased ammunition, right? Particularly like the low pressure
Yeah.
training
Yeah.
ammo, right?
Hmm.
Definitely viable in that space. As far as like full pressured ammunition, I would think full pressured ammunition for practice, I think would be fine. I think that there's another substantial problem that we have to consider when we're talking about duty ammunition, and that is when we move to something like a plastic casing. The technology of using brass, like specifically the brass that is used in casings, is specifically designed to expand to the right dimensions, seal the chamber, build the pressure, push the projectile down the barrel, and then rapidly reset to a degree so that it can be relatively easily extracted and ejected out of the gun. When you think about something that's more brittle than that, my mind goes to steel and aluminum cases. And in my experience, and Pete, you can chime in here too, when we're talking about using those things, the failure rate of those cases as it relates to like disintegration of the case is much, much higher on those materials than we're talking brass. What say you, Pete?
Definitely.
Definitely. Okay, cool. So we got a yay from Pete over there. um, so
Yeah, I agree.
so
Yeah.
my mindset is if we're going to something that is a polymer casing, we know that the actual pressure bearing component is the chamber of the gun. So to some degree, it doesn't really matter what it's made out of, except to the point where if we have the casing rapidly disintegrating in that gun, you've got then pieces of that casing that can get into the internal workings of the gun and shut it down in exotic ways that are difficult to fix on the spot. What do you think about that, Pete, as far as like duty use?
I've seen brass case. I've not to go off somewhere else, but it just made me think of an incident. I've actually seen a brass case, 5.56 brass case, about 70% of it melt down and shoot out the end of a barrel. Which is pretty cool.
You know what? I have also seen something similar. Now those weapons were definitely fully automatic, right? So they were pretty hot. But you know, now that you mentioned that, I had a cook-off. I was at a trade show and I had a gun cooking off on me. And what stopped that gun, I just decided to go for the ride on that one because I was like halfway through the magazine. And what stopped it was actually the case disintegrated. Like the front half of the case separated at like the shoulder up there, like literally melted.
That's exactly pretty much. Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, the problem with that though is the gun is actually pretty dangerous because if you think about that, you've got the head of the case, or the not the head, the shoulder forward of the case is stuck in the breech, and the gun has loaded another live cartridge into it. Right? So it's stuck.
Yeah.
And the gun is not in battery. And the gun is hot enough to cook off.
Right.
It is. So if you ever find yourself in that situation, what I suggest, because I'll tell you what happened, right? It detonated, right? We knew that it was going to happen, right? But what I suggest that you do, if you ever find yourself in that situation, is whatever you do, turn the ejection port of the gun away from you. And preferably put it on the ground. Disconnect the ammunition feeding device, put it on the ground, and somewhere in the process of you doing that, you're going to get a surprise. It probably won't last long enough for you to get all that way, but highly recommended.
Yeah. I support that message.
Of course, you could also just not shoot your guns till they're red hot. You know, that's a thing. But, you know, sometimes the testing protocol doesn't allow for that sort of thing. So,
yeah, exactly.
I have literally melted suppressors. I have melted the welds. Like the actual base material was good, but the welds melted. And that's a thing right there, right?
Yeah, that's hot.
Yeah, that's hot.
Yeah, holy shit. Yeah, that's it's crazy. But yeah, I mean, going back to, you know, the composite stuff, I mean, you know, I can't imagine that the breaking point or melting point to that it's got to be lower. I mean, I could be wrong, but yeah, there seems like there may be even more room for those types of errors happening, I guess. But again, you know, maybe they got some special shit out there that I've never seen, you know, that works just to, you know, works better.
I would suspect that we've also got like in addition to like the pressure spike shattering the case and causing a major problem, because, you know, those components getting down inside the gun will more than most likely shut it down at the least opportune time. But I would assume that as far as like long-term use, as far as like maintenance on the gun is concerned, I'm assuming that you're just going to extrude a whole bunch of plastic in it everywhere in that gun. Right? Forward.
Totally. Yeah.
Like everywhere.
I would have to assume too.
Yeah. And what leads me to believe this, and I have just a real quick story, because we're coming up on our hour here. We're actually a little bit over, but I was at an event probably 5 or 6 years ago, and I don't think they'll mind me saying this, but we were having a lot of fun with one of the Fostech Origin 12s. Have you ever shot this gun?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's a fun gun, right? It's expensive, and I want one. But yeah, so we had shot this gun all day. right? They had pallets of shotgun ammo, and we were just letting it eat all day. And eventually, the guns stopped. Like, it was like, wham, 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 new magazine, wham, 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 and it was just running like a scalded dog, right? Constantly. And then all of a sudden, it just quit. And I mean, it was done, quit. So the guy who was there doing all the stuff, he takes like the front half of the gun off, right? And he's, of course, wearing like asbestos gloves to do this because the thing's like piping hot, right? He pulls the front plug out of the gas piston. There's a plug that's removable. And he like taps it on the table, and the piston comes forward and knocks out this perfect little cylinder of plastic. Right? It was like maybe a quarter inch, maybe somewhere between a quarter and an eighth of an inch, right? On the table, right? Just chunk of plastic. And then he put the gun back together, and it ran the rest of the day, right? So what had happened was, in front of the piston, there was enough plastic from the wad in the gun that was being superheated and distributed into the piston system of the gun, that when the piston came back forward, it would crush it and turn it into a disc. And eventually that just built up. Oh, it was absolutely awesome. And that's why I didn't think that Fostech would be upset about me saying that, because it was pretty legit, right? That's one of the reasons I want one of those things, because they're basically unstoppable. Totally. And we weren't shooting like we weren't shooting like specialty ammo either. We were shooting like low brass bullcrap ammo, right? So, yeah. Alrighty,
that's wild.
Yeah, no, absolutely wild. Cool. So I would assume that we would have similar problems with any kind of 3D printed stuff. And of course, the laser sintered like metal casings are going to be exorbitantly expensive. The technology has not caught up with traditional manufacturing as it relates to cost savings. Nope. It may be someday, but as it sits right now, it's and you need to look no further than some of the things that are laser sintered. They're just typically more expensive than your traditional manufacturing thing. Again, I hope that changes down the road, but I think when it comes to 3D printed stuff and that, I think we're really talking about composite stuff. So let me do a real quick browse of the chat really quick and see if there's any more good questions in here. Okay. But in the meantime, tell people where they can find you online. So if they want to catch up with you at Defiant Munitions, they can.
Yeah, it's super easy, defiantmunitions.com. And shit, man, my personal cell phone number's on the webpage. You can call me right now and I'll answer. It's not very hard to get hold of me. My direct email is super easy. It's Pete Jr. at defiantmunitions.com.
And you guys got socials?
What's that?
You guys got socials?
Yeah. We have two different things on Facebook. We have our main page and then the Clubhouse, where we post, and then Defiant Munitions on Instagram. We have a YouTube channel, but I've just been so busy I haven't been able to do something.
Excuses.
I started doing stuff on it, and then I just got busy and just couldn't do it. A lot of people have been asking me to put more stuff on YouTube, so I'm going to try to make a point to do that. So,
well, if you have any questions about that, man, you just let me know, because I've been doing this for like a decade now. I don't have all the answers.
You have.
But if you've got questions about, guidelines or, what you can do, what you can't do, what would potentially look good, what would be good ideas within your capabilities, just hit me up. Let me know.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, man, you're probably considered an OG nowadays on YouTube. I mean, you've been around for a while.
Well, I'll put it this way. I'm going to GunCon at the end of June. So at the end of this month. Yeah. Oh my God, it's June already. And John, he calls me up. He's like, you want to participate in one of the panels? And I was like, yeah, sure. I'd love to. He's like, I think we're going to put you on the elite panel, which is the guys that have really big followings and or have been doing this for a long time. And he's like, I'm pretty sure that both of us qualify as the guys that have been doing this for way too long.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think I started the
Yeah,
channel
that's
like
cool.
2009 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been watching you for a lot longer than I had any idea who you were. Um,
I'm sorry
yeah,
about that.
even yeah, yeah. So it's been a while. It's cool, but very cool.
Yeah. Well, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Pete, thanks for joining us. And as he mentioned, hit him up on all the socials if you're interested in what Defiant Munitions is doing. And that's all for us here today. Thanks for tuning in. And hopefully we'll see you on another video here at the VSO Gun channel.